Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Highland Reserve. Today we are adopting a family of alpaca. Now, this is an unusual one, because I wouldn't call it a traditional farm species. However, I also wouldn't call it a pet. But they are kept by people in the UK. I guess kind of like ponies. You don't ride them or anything, you just have them for the love of the animals. I guess at least alpaca have wool going for them, so they have some use besides companionship. As with any animal, there are people who buy them without fully appreciating the requirements or the effort that goes into keeping them. So many end up at rescues or zoos like ours. Now we're not taking them from individuals, but an alpaca rescue. Unlike the donkeys or the deer, it isn't because of an overflow situation. I'm currently holding out for a new opportunity for a facility to take over, because we've kind of reached our limits here. There are a couple of species that we could get in, but for the most part we've accommodated all the local species. And due to the nature of the reserve being a self-funded, privately owned venture, we're not really getting the kind of support needed for more exotic or endangered species that we would like. So I reached out to the Alpaca Centre and, with some convincing and a healthy donation, was allowed to take some on a short-term loan basis, just to prove that we can properly care for them. I have no doubt that we'll be able to handle them, so I'm not too concerned from that point of view. And it gives us a reason to build while we wait for whatever the fates have in store. This enclosure is a little out of the way, maybe a bit of a hidden gem, as I really like the look of this whole area. The enclosure itself is fairly neutral. The alpaca are yet another species with a low coverage requirement, so most of the scenery for this is outside the habitat perimeter. I think I may have also used up a lot of the available foliage allowance for moss, unfortunately, which severely limited my options. That being said, I really think the work that has gone into the surrounding area really makes up for this. It's almost like art. Negative space is as important as shading to highlight areas, so this enclosure is a negative space in the woodland area of the zoo. I use the alpaca as a size reference for the shelter. It's the first time I've actually used an animal as a reference, so I'm going to mark this episode as one of growth. I had considered making a fully enclosed shelter, but this habitat is a bit out of the way and not too easy for the keepers to reach, so it would make sense for the enclosure to act as a summer pen. And then when we get into the cold months and the animals need to be moved indoors, for whatever period they might need to be moved in, they can be walked over to the goat or sheep barns. The sheep one's not enclosed fully, but it'll still be warmer than this. And these are all animals that at the very least could live beside each other, even if they aren't mingling. So I went minimal with the shelter. By the way, I don't actually know much about art. I just heard someone talk about negative space on tattoo masters, and it made sense in this context. I do like drawing though. Before we start on the fences, I'll just preface it by saying what we end up with is not what I start out making initially. I had an idea for a style of fence that I will still probably use one day, but I made the fence pieces far too close together for it to work the way that I wanted. I didn't really think about it until I had made most of it, so rather than just starting from scratch, I just adjusted to something a little bit simpler. I did spend a lot of time on some of the natural borders in this habitat, so that makes up for a little bit of the simplicity, I think. I guess I kind of need to explain why the posts are so high at least. I had an idea for a border that was a bit less straight edge. I was going to have a relatively low fence, just to block the animals in, with tall posts and some sort of string lights across the top. This would extend into part of the water crossing, which I have still included. I suppose I could have missed out some of the posts, but I didn't like the idea of having some tall and some short, I'd need to include the lights in the initial design so I can measure the fences correctly. It was easy enough to fix anyhow, and still something a bit different from most of the fences in the zoo. Once I had those in place, I then had to contend with the water. Now, I could have put a fence through it, maybe just a chain link to allow the water through without degrading so quickly. But I've been craving some natural barriers ever since episode 3 or 4 when I started to get back into the swing of things a bit. But I've held off to maintain the aesthetic, theme if you will. But for this little bonus habitat, hidden away at the back of the zoo, I needed to throw in a little something, Especially as the alpaca want a square foot of grass and no more. I needed something to raise this habitat up, to make it worthwhile. I'll begin by saying, the source of the water here is theoretical. I have no idea where it's come from, what direction it's going, so it might not make a whole lot of sense, but I'm okay with that at this stage, it's fine. I started out with a specific vision in mind. It's 2025 at the time of this being recorded, so I'm assuming everyone has seen The Lord of the Rings. If you haven't, pause this, go watch those, extended editions only. Should take a day if you do it right. Then come back and you'll understand what I'm talking about. In Fellowship, the hobbits jump down a bank off the road to hide from a Nazgul. The Nazgul then calls upon the insects to creep them out, and anyway, that drop down embankment was what I thought of when I started pulling up the earth to create this natural border. This is not what I ended up with, but that's how I come up with ideas and how I think things through. I ended up absolutely spamming the area with rocks, although in a deliberate and sculpted way rather than the shotgun approach I usually take. This did create a nice cutout where perhaps the ground was being levelled for this enclosure and it met some rock that was a bit more than expected. This may even be where the rock for the bridge was excavated. You know what? I'll write the lore here. This is where the bridge rocks came from. And the small stream was extended this way to help the environment bounce back. History is being written live. I put a lot of time into this one small slice of scenery. A lot of layering and textures. I think actually that accounts for the largest portion of this episode. But every now and then, I would remember why I started it in the first place. Actually, the reason I gave when I started talking about this, which I even forgot in the voiceover. Stopping the alpaca from escaping through the water. As it turns out, alpaca, in the game at least, are not strong climbers. I say climbers, I mean, they're not good at traversing uneven terrain. Obviously you don't see very many alpacas up trees. I kind of figured that as you see llamas and alpacas on mountainous terrain, it'd be okay at manoeuvring over rocky surfaces. But they seem to be held up nicely by medium-sized boulders and even those small faux rocks, which is a bit of a cheese, but it really did help with the design. I will admit, this is more of a coastline aesthetic, especially when I put in the rope sticks. But when all of the foliage is in place, I don't think it looks out of place at all. I've also gained a whole load of ideas for the future habitat designs, and zoo layout ideas too. But those will all be revealed when the time is right. I mentioned in the last episode that I found the cinematic cameras. There are a couple of those at the end of this episode too, so stick around for those. But I have noticed that my PC's ability to record and play struggles with these fluid motions. It's the same thing on the Farming Sim series. But I have taken a liking to making these videos. It's become sort of a big part of my day-to-day now, and I really enjoy the process and the development. But at the moment, the quality is sort of getting in the way of my happiness. So, I've taken a couple of weeks off recording. There shouldn't be any interruptions in the series, as I was decently ahead, but now that I have an upgrade incoming, I don't want to play or record in the same poor quality. especially not for the next episode of the Highland Reserve. I'm going to test everything on Zalonka, as that series is a test series to begin with, and then all future episodes should be in a respectable quality. Fingers crossed. I am very excited for it to arrive. I've been building up ideas for weeks now, and I'm going to spend a good week using every available moment to record. Got many things in the works. Being able to change the colour of the faux rocks is great. I did have a bit of trouble colour matching to the real rocks, as you can see. They're a bit darker, so they stand out a bit, but I do adjust them a little bit to blend in a bit more. I don't know if they were available the last time I played this. The faux rocks, that is. I should give you some idea of just how long it had been. This series and this channel as a whole, really, have really given me a motivation to go back to some of the old games that I grew up with. It's a shame, really. This will be especially felt by my generation and the ones that come after. You grow up with games, it's part of your social upbringing. I remember getting home after school and playing Modern Warfare with all my mates into the early hours. Probably not the best thing for a school night, but you know, different times. You get away with a bit more back then. You get to a certain age, not even a certain age, a certain stage in life, you know, where you get a job, you have responsibilities, and all the energy that used to funnel into games just gets divided and divided and divided. And eventually you just have nothing left for the things you used to love. Your console becomes a streaming tool, your PC's for work. Being an adult sucks. I'm kinda joking. Yeah. You develop as a person, your interests evolve, but you should always make time for your inner child. Let yourself have fun. Enjoy life as much as possible. Even when things aren't going to, especially when things aren't going to plan. Don't let life get too serious. Anyway, enough of the self-help. This is the rope sticks that I was talking about. It has a bit of a beach, coast feel to it, you know. I wanted something really simple to act as a water barrier that wasn't more rocks. I like rocks, but you can overdo it. I think there's an argument for doing things that don't make sense in the real world. We put together a pretty simple zoo here, and that was the plan, so I'm not complaining. But for the most part, everything sort of makes sense. It feels like you could take it all, put it in the real world, and it would still work the same way. But then you have these nice little scenic highlights, like this corner of the alpaca habitat, or under the bridge in the deer habitat, where, in real life, animals would absolutely escape with ease. But the thought of putting a fence through this scene or a wire mesh under the bridge just makes me sad. I think we've done well here, so I'm allowing a bit of leeway. In future projects though, oh, just you wait. I have such plans. And only some of them make sense. I'm not going to make you watch all the scenery go in around or we'll be here forever. I'm trying to keep these videos to a respectable length. But the more work that goes into the habitat, they tend to creep up a little bit. I'm only using all the same European temperate foliage to try and fill in the surrounding area and make it a little bit more complete. I'm happy to have the sprawling green fields at the other parts of the reserve, as it fits in nicely with some of the farm species that we have around there. But here, this lightly wooded area is definitely needed. We're nearly at the cinematic scenes now, so I will let you watch them in peace. I have some big improvements in store for the next episode, next Friday, which will be a special episode in itself, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that one, and for all the other things that I've got in store. I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode, and I'll catch you next week.